My name's Rachel, and last year my entire family forgot my birthday while obsessing over a bridal shower I wasn't even invited to. So I showed up, with a Tiffany bag, a silent smile, and a plan to make sure they never erased me again. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing where our little storytelling circle reaches. I walked into my apartment carrying a box of cupcakes, 12 perfect little peaks of lavender frosting from that overpriced bakery on Hawthorne I always swore I'd only splurge on for special occasions. Today was supposed to be one. My birthday, 36. I don't feel old, I don't feel young, I just feel like maybe this time they'll remember. The scent of vanilla buttercream hit first, then the silence. My apartment was still and dim, early autumn light pouring through the half-closed blinds. I didn't decorate. No balloons, no streamers. Just me, the cupcakes, and a little paper crown I tossed in the trash after wearing for 3 seconds in the mirror. I put the box down on the kitchen counter, thumbed the edge of the cardboard for a second, then reached for my phone. 83 unread messages in the family group chat. For a breath, my heart lifted. Maybe they'd done something, some kind of flood of late texts, a video compilation, a surprise FaceTime. I tapped in, smiling already. But my smile didn't last longer than 2 seconds. The first message was from Aunt Gwen. Can we finalize the shower colors today? I need to place the napkin order by 5. Then my mom chiming in, excitedly sharing a photo of a floral arch. Chloe would love this for the entryway. I scrolled and scrolled. Not one message mentioned me. My name, Rachel, was completely absent. The last 83 texts were entirely about Chloe's bridal shower, which, yes, is a big deal. But today's my day. I kept scrolling like maybe I'd missed it. Maybe one happy birthday ratch was buried in a thread about cake flavors. Nothing, my stomach dipped. My hands felt oddly cold despite the sweater sleeves pulled over them. I looked back at the cupcakes, lavender, my favorite, the same ones Chloe used to steal bites of when we were kids. I typed, "Hey, small thing, today's actually my birthday, sent it." Waited. I imagined someone typing bubbles would pop up, right? But nothing. For an excruciating minute, no one responded. Then, finally, Michael, my younger brother, replied with just one word, "Oops." No emoji, no follow-up, just oops. As if forgetting someone's birthday was like bumping into them in a hallway. I stared at that word for so long it blurred. My throat felt tight. I wasn't even sure why I expected anything this year. It's not like I don't have history with this sort of thing. But still, it stung. I backed out of the chat and opened Instagram. Chloe's story was a boomerang of her holding a clipboard, laughing with Jenna and Lily. Planning, always planning. Underneath the clip, shower dreaming bouquet sparkles countdown to misses. My birthday didn't exist there either. I sank onto the couch, the quiet now screaming. It filled every corner, every cup and book and throw pillow in my living room. I suddenly noticed how lonely everything looked. How it all felt like background noise in someone else's movie. I didn't want a parade. I didn't expect gifts or a big dinner. But a text, a 5-second voice note, nothing, except Lily. My 10-year-old cousin's daughter had called me that morning, just Lily. She sang the birthday song off-key while trying to balance her phone against a cereal box. She told me I was the coolest grown-up ever, then asked if I liked narwhals. That was it. That tiny voice, that messy video call, that had been the only real thing all day. It's funny how one child remembering can make an entire room full of adults feel invisible. I got up, walked to the counter, opened the cupcake box. I pulled one out, lavender swirl, delicate sugar pearl on top, and bit into it. It was sweet, and it tasted like grief. I should have closed the chat and walked away. Should have gone out, taken myself to that rooftop sushi place I always talk about but never go to. Should have let the oops roll off me like water. But I didn't. I sat at my kitchen table with the phone still in my hand, rereading every message like they were puzzle pieces, trying to find where I went missing. They hadn't just forgotten my birthday. They'd planned an entire event, floral arch, signature cocktails, a fancy farm chic theme, whatever that means, and not one person had even thought to tag me. There was a spreadsheet link from Jenna with a list of guests to be finalized. I opened it. Chloe's bridesmaids were highlighted in pale pink. Family invitees in cream. A column labeled definitely attending and another one just as long marked maybe confirm. I scrolled slowly, my thumb steady. No Rachel. Not under family, not under friends, not even under the plus ones and long shots column. I wasn't just forgotten. I'd been left out with intention. The spreadsheet closed with a final row. Let's make this day perfect. Chloe deserves only love in the room. Only love. I laughed out loud. A sharp little sound that startled me in the quiet. As if love was something you could spreadsheet into existence. As if love had borders and apparently I lived just outside them. I looked around my kitchen, then down at the floral print plate I'd pulled out for the cupcakes. It was one of the few things I'd kept from Mom's house, back when I thought nostalgia meant something and not just proof of selective affection. This wasn't new. It wasn't even shocking. It was just exhausting. There was this ache beneath my ribs. Not stabbing, not screaming. Just low, heavy, and old. Like it had been sitting there for years, waiting for moments like this to remind me that I was never quite centered in the family portrait. Always slightly out of frame. And it wasn't always blatant. Sometimes it was the way Mom would cut me off mid-sentence at dinner. The way Michael got credit for helping Dad fix the porch, even though I held the ladder for hours. The way Jenna would talk over me, louder and brighter until my words just floated into the wallpaper. Small things, but they add up. I traced the edge of the plate with my fingertip. Once, when I was 13, I had made a birthday cake for Chloe. A real one, 2 layers, pink buttercream, piped hearts. She'd cried when she saw it, told me I was her favorite cousin. Now she was getting married and I wasn't even worth a mention. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the city. Portland was glowing soft in the late light. Wet sidewalks, distant coffee shop buzz, the murmur of a Friday evening beginning to breathe. People out there were laughing, toasting, remembering each other. I was alone with a dozen cupcakes and a group chat that made me feel like a ghost. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Lily. A message. Did you like the narwhal drawing? Spouting birthday sparkling, I smiled, actual warmth rising in my chest. I hadn't even seen the attachment earlier. I opened it and there it was. A lopsided, rainbow-colored narwhal holding a cake. In big block letters. Rachel rocks! My eyes watered before I could stop them. Not because I was sad, but because one child remembered something no one else did, that I existed, that I mattered. And in that moment, I realized something important. Maybe the real question wasn't whether they meant to leave me out. Maybe the question was why I kept letting them. That night, the rain began around 9. Not a dramatic downpour, just a soft, whispering drizzle that made the city blur behind the window pane. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't answer texts. I just sat at my desk with a cup of peppermint tea and a stack of note cards I'd bought years ago thinking I'd use them to write thank you notes or birthday wishes. Funny how they never got used until now. I took the first card, uncapped a pen, and wrote, "Dear Michael, thank you for reminding me that oops can be a full sentence. One that somehow says, you're forgettable, you're optional, you're nothing. But I'm not nothing, Michael, I'm your sister. I'm the one who patched your jacket after that fight in 8th grade. The one who bylaid you out of your first failed job with rent money I didn't really have. So no, you don't get to oops me anymore." I stared at the card, letting the ink dry before setting it aside. Then I pulled out another. "Dear Mom, you've always said I was too sensitive. That I read into things. That I twist moments into wounds. But do you know what it feels like to be left out by your entire family on your birthday? To watch strangers on social media receive more love from their baristas than I get from the people who raised me. Sensitivity isn't the issue, Mom. Silence is. And I'm done swallowing it." The letters kept coming. To Aunt Gwen, for all the passive-aggressive jabs about how I chose career over connection. To Jenna, who always manages to laugh just a little too hard when someone jokes at my expense. To Chloe, yes, even Chloe, because even if she hadn't meant to exclude me, she never asked why I hadn't RSVP'd either. Each one poured out of me like something I'd been holding in for years. I didn't edit. I didn't second guess. I just wrote. By midnight, the stack sat neatly beside me, 13 letters in total, each one a reckoning, each one a truth I'd never dared say aloud. I read them again, one by one, imagining how each person might react. Shock, dismissal, maybe even guilt, but none of that really mattered, because something shifted in me while writing them, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not loud, aggressive power, but quiet, steady certainty. The kind that says, I see what you've done. I see what you keep doing. And I will no longer make space for your erasure. I picked up the stack and stood over the trash bin. One by one, I tore the letters in half. Then quarters. Then eighths. I didn't need them to read my pain to validate it. I didn't need confrontation to claim my worth. What I needed, what I truly needed, was to show up not as a guest begging for inclusion, but as a force, as proof, as presence. They didn't think I'd come to the wedding. Of course they didn't. Why would someone you barely acknowledge bother making the trip? But I would. I'd show up in a silk dress with a Tiffany bag in hand, not to grovel, but to remind them that I exist, that I remember everything. That absence doesn't mean invisibility. I pulled up the registry. Chloe had listed a vintage tea set, delicate china with rose gold rims and a ridiculous price tag. I bought it, had it gift-wrapped, then sat back and smiled, not because I was happy, but because I was done waiting for them to choose me. I chose me. The drive to the wedding was longer than I remembered. 2 hours of winding roads and wet October skies. As I neared the country club, I could see the cars lined up outside. Sleek rentals, pristine SUVs, a few luxury sedans. Everything was curated, even the weather, like the rain had been politely asked to fall in slow motion just for aesthetic value. I sat in my car a moment before stepping out. Dress, deep green silk, the kind that whispered when I moved. Shoes, block heels, polished, powerful, practical. Hair, up simple, a clean frame around my face. No one could say I didn't belong here. No one could say I hadn't come prepared. I reached over and picked up the gift bag from the passenger seat, Tiffany blue with that perfect white ribbon, the kind of packaging that carried its own kind of status. Inside was the tea set, nestled in tissue, with a handwritten card that read only, "For your next beginnings." I held the bag like a statement. Then I walked in. The foyer was all soft lighting and polished oak. Murmurs drifted through from the ballroom, glasses clinking, someone laughing too loudly, music humming beneath the surface like a pulse. And then I saw him. My father. He was standing near the entrance to the bar, dressed in a tailored suit that looked a touch too crisp, like it had been steamed just minutes before. His hand was mid-reach for a glass of champagne when he turned and locked eyes with me. The look on his face was sharp, sudden, like a window cracking in slow motion. "Rachel," he stammered, his voice just above a whisper. I took a breath and smiled, not wide, just enough. "I didn't think you were coming," he said. "No one did," I answered, silence. Not the kind you get in quiet rooms, but the kind that falls between people when the truth shows up uninvited. He opened his mouth again, maybe to explain, maybe to lie, maybe to minimize, who knows? But I stepped past him before he could. My heels echoed against the marble. My dress swayed gently at my knees. I didn't look back. Inside the ballroom, everything shimmered. Gold accents, white flowers, candlelight bouncing off crystal. It was the kind of wedding Pinterest would drool over. Heads turned as I entered, not dramatically, just enough to register the disruption. Like a ripple in a perfectly still glass of water. There were whispers, quick glances, some smiles, mostly tight ones. I saw Jenna elbow her husband. Aunt Gwen tilt her head with that performative squint she reserved for, "Oh dear, you look different." But I didn't stop. I was here for one thing, Chloe. She was across the room in a champagne-colored gown, her hair curled in soft waves, bouquet in one hand, glass in the other. She was glowing in that way brides are trained to glow, equal parts joy and exhaustion. When she saw me, her entire expression changed. The practiced smile vanished. For one raw second, her face was naked, surprised, moved. I walked up and handed her the Tiffany bag. "I wanted to wish you joy," I said, voice calm. She took the bag slowly, her fingers trembling just slightly at the ribbon. I added, "You weren't supposed to be the one who remembered me, but thank you for trying." Her eyes welled. Right there, amid the candlelight and curated joy, she blinked quickly, smiled softly, and whispered, "I never wanted you left out." It wasn't loud. It wasn't public, but it was real. I nodded once and stepped back, letting her return to the center of her perfect day. As I moved through the room, I caught my father watching me, hands clenched behind his back. And though no one said it outright, I could feel it in the air. She came. She wasn't supposed to, but she did. And somehow just being here had unsettled the balance. The reception moved around me like a scene on fast forward. Servers swirling with flutes of champagne, clusters of cousins snapping selfies near the floral arch, laughter pinging off crystal glasses. But I stayed still, tracing a deliberate path past relatives who greeted me with startled politeness and half-hearted waves. No one asked why I was there. No one dared. Until I reached her. Chloe stood just off to the side, speaking with the officiant, her bouquet now resting on a nearby table. She looked up as I approached again, like she'd been waiting. For a second, the room dimmed. Not literally, but in that emotional way, when everything else fades behind the only person whose response actually matters. I held out the Tiffany bag with both hands. "This is for you," I said softly. She took it reverently, like I'd handed her something fragile, an heirloom, maybe, or a sealed secret. Her fingers untied the ribbon without rushing, easing the lid open until the tissue parted to reveal the rose-gold-trimmed tea set. Her breath caught. "Oh, Rachel," she murmured, eyes shimmering. "It's beautiful." I smiled, not out of pride in the gift, but because of what it represented. It wasn't about the porcelain. It was about being present. About standing here calmly, unapologetically, wrapped in my own dignity. "I thought you might use it," I said, "for mornings that need warmth." Her lip trembled. Then I handed her a small envelope from my clutch. A card, no confessions, no backstory, just 6 handwritten words, "For your new table, remember everyone." She looked at the words for a long time before folding the card back into its envelope like it was too delicate to fully touch. "I mean it," she whispered. "I really never meant to leave you out." "I believe you," I said, and I did. Not everyone in my family meant to hurt me. Some just didn't see me. And in this moment, I could tell Chloe was seeing me clearly. "I told Mom to add you to the list," she added quickly, almost like a child confessing too late. "She said it had gotten too long and I didn't push back. I'm sorry." There it was. Not a grand apology, but an honest one. And I hadn't even asked for it. I stepped back, giving her space, letting her return to her day. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to anchor myself in the truth that I'd finally stopped shrinking. As I moved away from the bride, I passed Jenna and her husband hovering near the drinks table. Jenna's voice, coated in faux concern, trailed behind me like perfume. "Wow, Rachel's really making a moment out of this," she whispered. Her husband laughed, low and uncomfortable. "I swear she lives for these little stunts. The gift, the dress, she's basically doing performance art." I didn't turn around, I didn't flinch, but I heard it, and it stung. Not because it surprised me. Jenna had always spun the story her way. But because after everything, they still couldn't just let me exist without assigning motive. Still, I kept walking. I found a quiet spot near the garden doors and leaned against the cool frame. Through the glass, fairy lights shimmered on the lawn. The scent of roses filtered in through a crack in the door, mixed with rain and laughter. That's when Chloe slipped away from the crowd and walked over. "You okay?" she asked gently. I nodded. "You." She chuckled. "You mean besides drowning in attention and panic that the seating chart is off by 1? We shared a brief laugh, real, warm. She hesitated, then added, "I'm glad you came." "I'm glad I did too," I said. "Not because of them, because of you." She nodded, then pulled me into a soft, unexpected hug. And for a second the ache dulled. Not vanished, but dulled. When she returned to the dance floor, I watched her go. This girl I once made birthday cakes for, now a woman trying to bridge a gap she didn't cause. And I stayed near the shadows a while longer, sipping ginger ale, listening to the buzz of a party that felt more like performance than celebration. They saw me now. They couldn't unsee me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. I felt undeniable. By dinner, the ballroom had taken on that particular kind of gloss weddings are known for, the lighting dimmed to golden, the centerpieces softly glowing, and every table conversation competing with the DJ's polite jazz. I took a seat near the back, far from the head table, far from the wine-fueled laughter of my cousins. Not that anyone had saved me a seat. I chose the quietest one on purpose. A small table by the windows, where the rain had picked up again, streaking the panes like watercolor. A server came by, paused, and then with a trained smile placed a name card in front of me. It read guest in loopy script. Not Rachel, just guest. Fitting, across the room, Chloe glowed between her father and her new in-laws, her new world. Every so often, her eyes flicked toward me and I saw the flicker of something, maybe gratitude, maybe guilt, but she didn't come over again. And I didn't expect her to. I'd had my moment. But the night wasn't finished with me. It started as a whisper. Most poison does. I just finished my salad, some artfully arranged arugula pretending to be a meal when I heard Jenna's voice again. She was seated just close enough that I could hear her, but far enough to think I wouldn't. She just loves making statements, she said, not even lowering her voice. It's her thing, always has to reclaim the spotlight. A cousin next to her laughed. Right, like congratulations on your personal protest or whatever. You're still not the bride. I didn't move. I didn't flinch, but my pulse started thumping in my ears. She probably wants someone to make a scene, Jenna added, her words laced with saccharine venom. She's waiting for someone to snap so she can play the victim again. That word again landed like glass. I blinked slowly, willing myself to stay calm, to stay silent. This wasn't the moment. I hadn't come here to clap back, to argue, to confirm their narrative that I was the dramatic one. But oh, how easy it would have been. One look. One cutting sentence. I could have shredded Jenna with a single paragraph. Instead, I reached for the glass of water in front of me, took a sip, and fixed my gaze out the window. That's when Lily appeared beside my table. She was in her tiny blue dress with a silver ribbon, her curls a little frizzed from running around. She plopped down beside me without asking, holding a mini cupcake in one hand and a napkin in the other. Hi, she said matter-of-factly. Hi, I smiled, genuinely. She leaned in like she was sharing a secret. I told Chloe I saw you give her the blue bag. She said it was the prettiest thing anyone gave her. I felt my throat tighten. She told me you're her favorite cousin, Lily added proudly. And I said, mine too. I had to look down. I didn't want her to see my eyes glass over. She said she felt bad, Lily continued, chewing thoughtfully. That nobody told you stuff. Kids don't understand subtext. They only reflect what they see. And in that moment, she saw me more clearly than anyone else in the room. Thank you, Lily, I whispered, for remembering. She shrugged like it was obvious. Well, duh, you always remember me. Then she handed me her cupcake. For you, she said, because it's still kind of your birthday week, right? It was the smallest, most honest act of love in a room full of performative gestures, and it cracked something open in me. I took the cupcake, held it in both hands like it was precious. The DJ called for the father-daughter dance, and the room shifted again, people turning toward the dance floor. I watched Chloe dance with my uncle, her face soft and radiant in the spotlight. Jenna's whispers faded into the music, and I realized this was never about being front and center. It was about being seen, truly seen, even if it was just by one child in one moment, even if the rest of them never understood. The morning after the wedding, I woke up to silence. No dinging notifications, no follow-up messages, no sudden wave of guilt texts or you looked beautiful last night apologies from family members who had looked right past me. Nothing. Just the hum of the fridge and the pale Portland light seeping through my kitchen blinds. I made coffee slowly like something sacred, measured the grounds, watched the water pour. The scent filled the quiet, rich and steady, reminding me that I was still here, still whole, even if no one else noticed. I checked my phone again, though I didn't expect anything. I told myself I didn't care. But hope has a way of disguising itself, doesn't it? One message, just one, from Chloe. A photo of the tea set already unwrapped and resting on her kitchen counter. The caption, "Your gift felt like home, thank you, can we have brunch soon, just us?" My breath caught, not because it was elaborate or dramatic or long, but because it was intentional. In a family that barely acknowledged my birthday, barely acknowledged me, here was someone making room for connection. It felt like someone had lit a candle in a dark room and left it burning just for me. I texted back simply, "I'd love that, you name the day." And just like that, something shifted inside me. A weight I'd been carrying for years, not the whole burden, but a piece of it lifted. The following Saturday, Chloe picked a cafe tucked away in a neighborhood I hadn't visited in ages. Warm wood walls, mismatched mugs, fresh sourdough toast stacked like art. We sat in a corner booth by the window. She looked different out of the gown, softer, realer, like the girl I used to know before wedding plans and family politics drew their line in the sand. I meant to text sooner, she said, brushing her bangs back nervously. I didn't know what to say. You said enough, I replied. She smiled, relieved. You showing up the way you did, honestly, it knocked the air out of me. In a good way, like, oh right, Rachel's not someone you just forget about. I arched a brow, half smiling. I mean, it was my birthday. I know, she winced. I can't believe no one said anything. That's not okay. It's not the first time, I said, but I think it might be the last I let it slide. We talked for over an hour about the wedding, the bridal chaos, her plans to move across town with her husband. And slowly, like old ink soaking through paper, we talked about the family, about the erasure, the favoritism, the way silence becomes its own language. You know, she said carefully, I think a lot of them genuinely don't realize they do it. Like they've trained themselves not to see the imbalance. They call it keeping peace, but really it's just keeping their comfort. I nodded. Comfort over truth, that's the family motto. Chloe reached across the table, wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to pretend things are okay when they're not. You don't have to fix them, I said. Just don't be part of the forgetting. Her eyes met mine. I won't, promise. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. When we hugged goodbye outside, the wind picked up, tugging at her coat and blowing a strand of hair into her eyes. Text me next week, she said. Maybe we'll go walk the waterfront. I will, I promised. And I meant that too. As I walked away, Chloe's warmth followed me like a thread. A reminder that not all family is lost. That even in a forest of neglect, one tree leaning toward you can make a difference. It wasn't a full repair. It wasn't redemption. But it was a start. And sometimes, a single honest gesture can glow brighter than 100 empty smiles. By mid-December, Portland was wrapped in gray fog and holiday cheer. Storefronts blinked with string lights. Coffee shops steamed up their windows with cinnamon specials and lazy jazz. Everything seemed dipped in a cozy kind of magic. Except my phone. It buzzed just after 8 a.m. The family group chat, suddenly resurrected after weeks of near silence. Christmas-wrapped Christmas Eve AT Aunt GWENts, potluck games, ugly sweaters. Wrapped Christmas, there were emojis everywhere. Snowflakes, reindeer, even a disco ball. Like someone had swallowed a holiday catalog and spit it out through the keyboard. I almost swiped it away out of habit, but something stopped me. I opened it fully, thumbing through the new messages. Michael, we'll bring the cider. Jenna, I call the cookie table smiling face with heart eyes mom. Rachel, you're bringing green beans, right? I blinked. Rachel, not Rachel, not even close. I stared at it for a moment, trying to decide if it was a typo. A slip, autocorrect, something innocent. But it wasn't, was it? Because the only time I'd ever been called Rachel was by people who didn't know me. Or worse, didn't care to. It wasn't just the misspelling. It was what it meant. That I'd been added at the last second. That I wasn't part of the original plan, just penciled in after someone realized I hadn't been invited yet. Tossed in like an afterthought, expendable, replaceable, optional. My chest tightened. Not the kind of tight that comes with heartbreak, but with fury. I didn't reply. I didn't react. I just closed the app and sat back in my chair, watching a single strand of tinsel sway above my window heater. They hadn't changed. Chloe might have reached out. Lily might have remembered. But the rest? Still operating from the same script. Include Rachel when it's convenient. Speak her name only when needed. Forget her until she forces you to see her. I went through the rest of the day with the weight of that one misspelled name in the back of my mind. It echoed in my steps, in the quiet moments between emails, in the awkward smile I gave the barista when I picked up my drink. Not Rachel, just Rachel. That night I opened a drawer in my bedroom where I kept spare candles and letters I hadn't sent. I pulled out one card, just one. It wasn't a new letter. It was the torn-up corner of the one I'd written to my mom weeks earlier, the piece I hadn't thrown away for some reason. I unfolded it. The corner read, "You taught me that silence is safety. I've decided to stop learning." I tucked it into a fresh envelope and sealed it, not to send, but to remind myself. I was no longer going to play along with their forgetfulness, with their selective affection, with the way they reshaped family around convenience. but I was going to show up. Because if I didn't, they'd keep getting away with pretending I wasn't real. And I was very real. That misspelled name would not be my erasure. It would be my reason. Christmas Eve arrived cold and wet, with a sky the color of dishwater and sidewalks slick from endless drizzle. I drove to Aunt Gwen's house in silence. No holiday playlist, no cheery thoughts, just the steady rhythm of the wipers and the weight of everything I wasn't going to say. In the backseat were two carefully chosen gifts. One wrapped in mint green paper with tiny gold narwhals dancing across it, for Lily. The other in understated ivory, tied with a deep burgundy ribbon for Chloe. That was it, 2 gifts, not out of spite, but out of clarity. I wouldn't perform generosity for people who couldn't remember my name. Aunt Gwen's driveway was already packed, so I parked down the street and walked. As I stepped through the door, the familiar scent hit me, nutmeg sugar cookies, something burning slightly in the oven. The noise was instant. Laughter layered over the sharp clink of wine glasses. Someone had on a Santa hat, and someone else was yelling about eggnog calories. And no one noticed I'd arrived. I stood there for a moment in the entryway, coat still damp, holding 2 small boxes like shields. I glanced around. Michael and his wife were unwrapping matching slippers from Mom. Jenna was already half a bottle in, loudly discussing her newest skincare routine to anyone within earshot. Cousins passed around scarves, mugs, candles, all variations of the same impersonal thought. None of them even looked at me. I found Lily in the corner, curled up on the carpet with a holiday craft kit and glitter on her cheek. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Rachel!" She ran up and launched herself into a hug. I nearly dropped the gifts. "I made you something," she said, pulling a folded piece of cardstock from her glittery pile. Inside was a drawing of a narwhal under a Christmas tree, smiling with a tiny party hat. I handed her the mint green box. "Then we're both artists this year." She tore the paper with glee, revealing a small hardcover book about sea creatures and a stuffed narwhal that matched the one she'd drawn. "You remembered," she gasped. I smiled, my eyes stinging. "Of course I did." Chloe was next. She was helping serve cider when I walked over, holding out the ivory box. Her eyes widened a little as she saw me. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she whispered. "I did," I said simply. "This is for you." She pulled me into a quick hug and held the box like it mattered. I didn't say more, I didn't need to. And with that, my task was done. No one else got a gift. No candles for Gwen, no scarf for Jenna, no bottle of wine for Mom. And the silence that followed was noticeable. It began as a slight shift. The kind people don't acknowledge but feel, like a draft in a room with the windows closed. By the time I poured myself a cup of cider, I caught the first whisper. "She didn't bring anything for anyone else. She used to bake cookies for the whole family. I guess she's punishing us now. She's so cold." I stood at the edge of the room, sipping slowly, listening to them rewrite my choices in real time. Not one of them approached me. Not one asked how I'd been. They simply observed, judged, and carried on. I wandered into the living room, where the tree lights blinked with mechanical cheer and the sound of Bing Crosby floated from an old speaker. I took a seat on the armrest of a couch, watching everyone move as if I were a shadow. They didn't need me to be angry for them to feel discomfort. All I had to do was exist on my own terms, and that somehow was offensive enough. I stayed an hour, long enough to give, long enough to witness, not long enough to explain. And in that choice, I found something I hadn't expected: peace. Not joy, not forgiveness, but peace. The kind that settles when you finally stop proving your worth to people who will never measure it properly. By dessert, the room had thickened, not from warmth, but from something heavier. A mood. A quiet strain under the surface glitter. The tree sparkled. Candles flickered in their frosted holders. Plates of half-eaten fudge and crumb-streaked pies sat on the sideboard, untouched now, like props on a stage that had outlived its scene. I sat in a corner of the living room, sipping my second cup of cider, watching everything, observing. It was a strange kind of invisibility, where your presence is obvious enough to be judged but never quite acknowledged. Jenna floated by in a velvet dress 2 sizes too small, stopping just long enough to refill her wine. Her voice, as always, carried farther than she thought. "She really didn't bring anything else." she whispered to someone behind her. "It's a holiday, not a protest." I didn't turn. Then someone else. An uncle I barely spoke to muttered through his second glass of Merlot. "Some people just love withholding. Makes them feel powerful." And that was the word that struck me. Withholding. As if choosing who I give to after years of being overlooked was an act of cruelty instead of self-respect. I watched them pass mugs and scarves and scented lotions from some bulk set that screamed last-minute clearance. I watched the women fake delight and the men pretend they noticed. It was all so rehearsed, so deeply shallow, and for the first time, I wasn't sad about being on the outside. I was relieved, because I didn't want to be part of this ritual anymore. The kind where love was measured by whether or not you showed up with tins of fudge or tacky bath bombs. The kind where people remembered you when it was convenient and resented you when you didn't play along. I thought back to Lily, now curled up next to Chloe with her new book open, mouthing the words as she turned the pages. And Chloe laughing softly at something Lily said, her gift box still unopened in her lap. That was what I came for, and I'd found it. Everything else was noise. Across the room, Mom stood stiffly by the window, glass in hand, gaze unfocused. She hadn't said much all night, hadn't asked why I was quiet or why I hadn't brought her a gift or even how I was. But she'd looked at me, often, not warmly, not cruelly, just curiously, like she was trying to remember a version of me she once understood but could no longer quite recognize. Maybe I didn't match the one she'd boxed away in her memory. The good daughter, the quiet one, the reliable giver, the one who'd always made sure everyone had enough even when she was running on empty. I met her eyes for a second. She held the look and then looked away, not out of shame, but out of discomfort. I wasn't playing my part anymore, and that unsettled her. Eventually, the family shifted toward the dining room again. Someone started a holiday trivia game. Someone else complained about how long the drive home would be. The machine of the evening kept churning, clicking forward without me. I stayed in my corner, watching, breathing, realizing I was here, but I wasn't of this place anymore. I didn't belong to their rhythms, their rules, their convenient memories. I didn't owe them anything. And as the laughter rose around another round of who brought the weirdest gift, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel in this house. Freedom. Not loud or dramatic, just full. Like the quiet strength of someone who has finally stopped begging to be seated at a table where the chairs were always wobbly anyway. I don't know what shifted first, the room or me. Maybe both. Because sometime between the trivia game starting and Aunt Gwen shouting answers no one asked for, a strange calm rolled over me. A clarity so sharp it almost hummed beneath my skin. I stood quietly from the couch armrest where I'd been perched. No dramatic scraping of chairs, no throat clearing, just a simple rise like I'd remembered something in another room. No one noticed at first. Then Lily did. She closed her book and watched me with those wide, perceptive eyes kids have, the ones adults lose when they start pretending. Across the room, Mom frowned slightly, confused. Chloe straightened up. A few cousins glanced over, expecting what? A toast, maybe, an apology, a confession, something that put me back into my assigned role. Instead, I walked to the fireplace mantel. The room quieted in pieces, first the kids, then the women on the couch, then the clatter of dishes in the kitchen, until the silence reached the men by the bar, spreading like a soft ripple. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Thank you," I said gently, "for inviting me tonight." It wasn't sarcasm. It wasn't sweetened. It was just the truth, neutral and steady. A few people shifted awkwardly. "And I wanted to say," I continued, "that next year I'll be away for the holidays." A pin could have dropped on the carpet and still echoed. No one breathed, no jokes, no forced smiles, just a collective tightening in the air like everyone realized at the exact same second that something was ending. I looked at Chloe. "Thank you," I said softly, "for the brunch that felt like actual love." Her eyes filled instantly. Then I turned toward Lily. She walked straight to me, no hesitation at all. I knelt and kissed the top of her head, breathing in the faint scent of sugar cookies and glitter glue. "Thank you for remembering me," I whispered. She hugged me around the neck fiercely, like she understood everything adults tried to ignore. When I stood again, the silence had thickened into something almost tangible, heavy, expectant, stunned. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I wasn't dramatic. I was simply done. The kind of done that doesn't need permission, or approval, or applause. I walked toward the coat rack, slipping my scarf around my neck as everyone watched, really watched for the first time in years. No one stopped me. No one tried to fix it. No one said a word. I opened the front door. Cold air rushed in, fresh and honest. Behind me, someone inhaled shakily. Someone else murmured, "She's serious." And another whispered, "What did we do?" I didn't answer them. I didn't even look back. I stepped out into the wet December night, the door closing softly behind me, quiet, final, unmistakable. And as the sound faded into the dark, I knew the truth. It wasn't my exit that shook them. It was the realization that I was leaving without anger, without theatrics, without a single thread tying me to their version of me anymore. Their silence wasn't power. Mine was. The street was quiet. Just wet pavement and the hiss of tires on slick roads as I walked to my car. The air was sharp with winter, each breath like a reset. I didn't rush. I didn't look over my shoulder. I felt weightless, like I'd been carrying a ghost of myself inside that house for years and finally left her behind. The moment I sat behind the wheel, the heat of my resolve warmed me more than the car ever could. I placed my keys in the ignition, then paused. There was a noise behind me, not loud, just the front door opening. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her, my mother, standing in the golden spill of porch light, her cardigan wrapped tightly, arms crossed, mouth slightly open like she'd been caught mid-thought. She didn't call out. She just stood there, half in, half out of the house. Like she'd followed me in spirit but didn't know what to do now that the distance was real. And for one brief second, I wondered, will she say something? Will she call me back? Will she finally ask me why? But she didn't. Her lips parted once, then closed, and the door, still open, remained that way as I turned the key. As the engine hummed to life, the porch light blinked behind her like it, too, was uncertain about what to illuminate anymore. I pulled away slowly. Still, she didn't move. Not to wave, not to walk down the steps, just watched. And somehow that stung more than if she'd slammed the door in my face. Because it meant she knew. They all did. They knew that something inside me had shifted. And they knew they were not invited to follow. They would talk, of course. About how I stormed out, even though I hadn't. About how I was difficult, cold, holding grudges. They'd rewrite the narrative until it suited them again, until my quiet exit became proof of my instability instead of their erasure. But I wouldn't be there to correct them. That was the power, not in staying, but in walking away knowing I didn't owe them a single edit. By the time I reached my apartment, the rain had stopped. The city was slick and shining beneath street lamps. Inside, the air smelled like peppermint from the candle I'd left burning that morning. I peeled off my coat, kicked off my shoes, sat on the couch in silence. Not the silence of being forgotten, the silence of choosing peace. My phone buzzed once, a text from Chloe. "I saw what you did. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I'm here whenever you need me." I replied. "Same, always." And then I tucked my phone away, stood up, and poured myself a glass of wine. Just one, lifted it to no one. No audience. No spotlight, just me. Free, finally, from the performance of being palatable. 1 year later, I woke up to sunlight slanting through a sheer curtain, warm and gold, the way winter light never quite is back home. The sounds were different too, soft chatter from the street below, distant calls to prayer, the rustle of vendors setting up their morning stalls. Morocco. I dreamed of coming here since I was 14, tracing maps in library books, imagining colors and spices and stories that didn't belong to the life I was born into. And now, on my birthday, I was finally here, alone by choice, at peace. I got dressed slowly, pulling on a linen dress that breathed with the breeze. The air smelled like oranges and cardamom. Outside, the Medina was waking up, embroidered cushions being placed on stools, doors opening to reveal hidden courtyards. It felt like a place built on secrets and beauty and reinvention, exactly what I needed. I carried my small breakfast, fresh bread, honey, mint tea to the rooftop terrace of my riad. From there, the city stretched out like a mosaic. White walls, blue doors, terracotta rooftops soaking up the morning. And for the first time on a birthday, I didn't wonder who would remember. I already knew. I opened my phone, not the family group chat, not social media, and pulled out a postcard I'd bought the day before. A watercolor of a winding Moroccan street with a lone girl in red walking confidently ahead. I wrote just 7 words. Thank you for remembering. Love, Rachel. It was for Lily. Not for the adults who forgot me. Not for the ones who twisted my silence into ego or my boundaries into punishment. Just for the one person who'd seen me, year after year, even when everyone else looked past me. I signed it, tucked it into my bag, and smiled. Below, a vendor waved from the street, urging me to try a slice of still-warm flatbread. I waved back, calling down that I'd be there in a minute. His grin widened, warmth from a stranger that felt more sincere than a lifetime of conditional affection. That was the real revelation. Chosen love holds more weight than inherited neglect. I sipped my mint tea, letting the steam rise into the cool air. I closed my eyes and breathed in deeply, feeling the truth settle in my chest. I wasn't missing from anything. I had simply stopped looking for myself in places that never held space for me. A soft breeze lifted the hem of my dress. A distant bell chimed. Somewhere down the street, children were laughing, chasing something I couldn't see, and I felt whole. This was my life now, when I didn't have to justify or shrink to fit inside someone else's expectations. A life where my name wasn't misspelled or overlooked. A life where I wasn't optional. I finished my tea, folded the postcard carefully, and headed downstairs to start my day, my birthday, in a place that finally matched the person I'd fought to become. A woman visible to herself. A woman who chose peace. A woman who walked away and never looked back.